This is Clark at Large for Thursday, November 17th, 2016. We are 9 days removed from this election of Donald Trump as the 45th President of the United States. In that time, some very disturbing events have taken place. Reports of racist and xenophobic vandalism with swastika graffiti targeting LGBTQ members, people of color, and Muslims has been reported by all the major news sites. Videos of hate crimes being committed in broad daylight are spreading through social media, and all of this in the name of President-elect Donald Trump. Violence is breaking out among otherwise peaceful protests of the election by those who supported Hillary Clinton. Minority communities are expressing terror at the possibilities from a Donald Trump presidency. In an interview last Sunday with Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes, Donald Trump said at the taping on Friday that this was the first he heard about the ethnic violence.
I'm very surprised to hear that. I hate to hear that. I hate
but
to hear
you do hear it.
I don't hear it. I saw one or two instances.
On social
but I think
media?
it's a very small amount. Again, I think it's
Do
the
you
media.
want to say anything to those people?
I would say don't do it. That's terrible. Because I'm going to bring this country together.
They're harassing Latinos, Muslims.
I am so saddened to hear that. And I say stop it. If it helps. I will say this, and I'll say it right to the camera, stop it.
Our audio is courtesy of CBS This Morning. That exchange between Stahl and Trump lasted 35 seconds. The rebuke Trump offered to his supporters committing the crimes lasted all of 7 seconds. Clark at Large does not believe 7 seconds is adequate time to devote to the cause of calming a worrying nation, nor does this broadcast believe merely saying stop it as one would scold a child an adequate response to the situation at hand. The president-elect would be well advised to take some time and advise his followers that the people they wish to hurt in his name are human beings, just like them, who simply want to go about the business of peacefully living their lives. Trump should remind his base that no laws have changed in this country, especially those dealing with assault and battery, terroristic threatening, wanton endangerment, and especially hate crimes. Many Trump supporters seem to have the idea that there has been a repeal of human decency, giving them license to harm others as they please now that Trump is president-elect. But they are not the only ones. On the other side, peaceful protests erupt into violence among anti-Trump people. They could use a lecture as well as reassurance that all will be well for them and theirs. Mr. Trump would be well advised to consider more time to address the victims of these crimes and pledge his full support in the prosecution of hate crimes. This is, after all, the main description of the job he's getting ready to take as an enforcer of the laws Congress passes. Today, many minorities are keeping a watchful eye over their shoulder, and this certainly isn't the first time in history they've had to do this. I offer you a clip from CBS legend Edward R. Murrow during the Joe McCarthy era, which holds many similarities to what's going on today in Trump's America.
Earlier, the senator asked, "Upon what meat does this our Caesar feed?" Had he looked 3 lines earlier in Shakespeare's Caesar, he would have found this line, which is not altogether inappropriate. "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." No one familiar with the history of his country can deny that congressional committees are useful. It is necessary to investigate before legislating. But the line between investigating and persecuting is a very fine one, and the junior senator from Wisconsin has stepped over it repeatedly. His primary achievement has been in confusing the public mind as between the internal and the external threats of communism. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof, and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. We will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason if we dig deep in our history and our doctrine, and remember that we are not descended from fearful men, not from men who feared to write, to speak, to associate, and to defend causes that were for the moment unpopular. This is no time for men who oppose Senator McCarthy's methods to keep silent, or for those who approve. We can deny our heritage and our history, but we cannot escape responsibility for the result. There is no way for a citizen of a republic to abdicate his responsibilities. As a nation, we have come into our full inheritance at a tender age. We proclaim ourselves, as indeed we are, the defenders of freedom wherever it continues to exist in the world. But we cannot defend freedom abroad by deserting it at home. The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear, he merely exploited it, and rather successfully. Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.
Now, by comparison, listen to Leslie Stahl continue to interview Trump.
When they demonstrate against you and there are signs out there, I mean, don't you say to yourself, I guess you don't, do I have to worry about this? Do I have to go out and assuage them? Do I have to tell them not to be afraid? They're afraid.
I would tell them, don't be afraid. Absolutely.
But that's not what you're saying.
Well,
I said it.
Oh, I think, no, I think I'm saying it. I've been saying it.
Okay.
Don't be afraid. We are going to bring our country back, but certainly don't be afraid.
Leslie Stahl challenges him that he's not advised people to not be afraid. He immediately contradicts her and claims he's been sending that message. She challenges him again on the obvious lie he's telling. His response is the same as before, to which Stahl finally says, okay. I was very disappointed in her interviewing technique to give up so easily. He merely repeated his same argument twice with no substantial evidence to counter Leslie Stahl's challenge, and she let him pass. That's not how this is supposed to work. The press is acting on behalf of the people, and the press have a right and an obligation to ask questions of the president-elect regarding his questionable character and behavior. Leslie dropped the ball this time, but she's actually been a good journalist who's just gotten caught up in the phenomenon of Donald Trump. There are other reporters out there who will be holding interviews with this man. I'd like to offer some suggestions for questions America would do well to have the answers to. Mr. President-elect, during the campaign, a recording was released of you essentially confessing to committing sexual assault, which you dismiss as locker room talk. 10 women have come forward claiming you sexually assaulted each of them in some way or form. My question is this. What do you say to any woman out there to convince them that, should they find themselves alone in a room with President Trump, that they will be physically safe from you if they have doubts about your sincerity? What can you say to put women at ease? Because there are quite a few of them out there that will be remembering how you didn't stand up for women in the workplace. Mr. President-elect, can you explain the fact that cybersecurity experts intercepted transfers between a server in your New York Trump Tower office and a bank in Russia having direct ties to Vladimir Putin? You claimed there was no contact between your campaign and the Russian government, a government, I will remind you, that this country is currently at odds with politically. Mr. President-elect, can you explain why a top Russian official confirmed that country was indeed in contact with your campaign when you distinctly said it wasn't? Were you in contact with them when you asked them during the campaign to hack servers on our soil in a bid to discredit your opponent in order to unfairly sweep the election? Mr. President-elect Donald Trump, did a foreign superpower infiltrate what is supposed to be a free and fair election? Mr. President-elect, can you educate me on how this doesn't fall under the definition of treason? There are some very excellent questions I'm sure this country would benefit hearing the answers to, whether we personally like them or not. A people cannot be an electorate unless they are an informed electorate, and Donald Trump owes us answers. Clark at Large makes this appeal to all those in the mainstream media who consider themselves journalists. You are America's voice, and a bridge between that voice and our government. A government that is supposed to answer to its people, not the other way around. America's citizens are counting on you to watch their back and sound the alarm if ever there's an enemy at the gate. One political party will have complete control over all 3 branches of government. You have to be our 4th branch, our 4th estate, now more than ever. It's said absolute power corrupts absolutely. You, the mainstream media, are a final defense against that axiom. But you need to be more than that. You need to be a deterrent to corruption. That's exactly the part of your job description you seem to have forgotten in your ratings grab. If an organization is not transparent, then it's much easier for corruption to sneak in under the cover of darkness. And any organization acting on behalf of the American people will only be as transparent as you allow it to be. People fear what they don't know, and they don't know Donald Trump. That's your fault. But you can make it up to us by starting right now to ask some of those very tough questions I suggested earlier. American history that's yet to be written is waiting on you. This has been Clark at Large, a Resistance radio broadcast. Good day and good luck. Clark at Large is trademark and copyright 2017 by Clark Patterson. All rights reserved. Portions of this broadcast may be rebroadcast as long as the complete context of the original material is maintained. Please direct all inquiries to clarkatlarge@outlook.com. ClarkAtlarge@outlook.com. Thank you for listening.